Are you a Black woman who is looking to get into tech, or even a Black male that, wants to understand the landscape of things? Today, I will be speaking with Dannielle, and we will be talking more about her experiences in the tech world coming up. What is up, guys? Antoine here once again from Mad Talk. Mad Talk is all about showing how entrepreneurs and creatives are making a difference in their everyday world. And before we jump into this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you know whenever we have new videos coming out. And today we will be continuing on with our Black entrepreneur and creative series that we started in February. But today I have the pleasure of speaking to Dannielle Johnson, and we will be talking to her about her experiences in tech. But she's not just, a person that has been in the tech world, but she's also a content creator. We will have a lot of her links in the description box, so definitely check that out. So Dannielle, how are you doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you.
No worries, no worries. We've known each other for a little bit now. I think maybe since the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when we initially met. So it's a pleasure just to have you on the show. But before we get into there, could you give our audience a little bit more insight on your background and everything you've done, like as of late, and how everything's going?
Absolutely. I would love to. That's like the part of being interviewed that's always a little bit shaky because you're like, wait, which part do I include? But I'll give you the abridged version. So my name is Dannielle Johnson. My handle is at the Dannielle J. You've probably seen me on Instagram or Facebook at some point because we have a couple of viral videos out there. But my background is in programming and data analytics. I actually broke Facebook twice. I have two cease and desist letters from Facebook that I have framed in my mom's home back in Denver, Colorado. I broke Twitter one time before, way before Elon Musk came in and destroyed it. I take a lot of claim to fame for those things just because at that time it was just such a new thing, and I was so interested in social media. I had to break it. I had to figure out how it worked, what was going on with these platforms, what were their real intentions, like almost on some conspiracy theorist type energy. But fast forward, that interest allowed me to start my own company that focused in on social media marketing because I saw that there was an opportunity to help small business owners and entrepreneurs really understand social media in a way that they probably weren't getting just from interacting on the platform. So I had a creative agency called Donut Socialite for many years, where we were helping small business owners and entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, because that was a lot of the clientele, was people who were working as a one-man band, but they had 17 different hats on. And we did that for many years until about 2017, when I kind of shift gears and got into the finance industry, and started my studies for data science. So right now I'm studying to become a data scientist, and I am still in the realms of technology from these different angles. Currently a front end developer at the University of Southern California, and still doing consultation on the side so that I can help people understand how the internet works, the Internet of Things, and also just social media specifically. But yeah, that's basically my whole, I guess, career, my my resume in a nutshell. And yeah, I'm also an executive board on several um, nonprofit organizations that are focused in on diversity, inclusion, and belonging in technology. And I have contributed a lot to Los Angeles when it comes to technology, and being able to speak to high school students, professionals, and the whole gambit of people when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and belonging in technology. And also just like, what's next? What's the next step for people of color in technology, and kind of bridging the gap between where you're at now and where you want to be in technology, those type of things.
And that's incredible. And, for me, because I've worked for a lot of tech companies as a recruiting coordinator. So I've worked in just in their HR and how they recruit employees. Like in one company that I work for, I'm not gonna say the name of. My manager was actually the first Black recruiting coordinator manager that they ever had, and it's an established company that a lot of people know.
Mm.
And that to me is just, it really says something about our society and about our world that we don't have enough people of color in a lot of these roles in tech and everything like that. And and I think just to jump into it, because a big thing that you are about is just diversity and inclusion and bringing that belonging into tech. What do you think is hindering a lot of individuals who look like us from getting into tech?
So there's just a natural gatekeeper when it comes to technology, and it's that you have to have a certain level of education in order for you to even be applicable to be in this industry. Most science and technology industries kind of have that veil, right? So to somebody who has an interest in the field, but not necessarily wants to be a technician in the field, they're looking at it like, well, I would have to know how to code in order for me to become a recruiter, right? Or I would have to know how to code in order for me to be a project manager or something like that. But the truth is, technology is just like any other industry. Like finance, you don't have to be an accountant to be a banker. You know, you can go and be a banker, or you could be a front end developer for a website for a financial company. There's just so many different roles in the industry of technology. And I think what the first gatekeeper is this idea that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics really has a level of entry. Like your entry has to be either a bachelor's or a master's in some science specific uh, arena. And it's just not true. And in a lot of cases, honestly, I will tell you on this platform, I do not have a degree at all. Like, I didn't get a 4-year degree, I didn't get a master's. I have a ton of certificates because that was just the way to go when you wanted to get like into the technician roles. That way you could show application. But I say that to also say that I too saw it from the outside and said, I could never be a programmer because I never finished a 4-year degree. I could never work for these high-end institutions and companies because I don't have a 4-year degree. But that's not true. I've been able to work for some amazing, amazing opportunities, amazing institutions, these big companies, and don't have a 4-year degree. So I think that's the first step, is that gatekeeper of, you need this in order to get this. Like the transaction in most people's eyes is skewed. So that's like the first thing. The second thing is, once you get into the role, you have like this imposter syndrome, right? You're like, I'm in this tech field. I don't know what I'm doing. They're going to find me out and they're going to fire me. So a lot of people end up pivoting in the first, I think it's like the first 1 to 5 years. A lot of people of color pivot out of technology because of this fear that's embedded, like, oh, they're going to find me out. But the truth is, there's no finding you out. And I just saw this really funny TikTok the other day. The lady went on to say, like, imposter syndrome is one of those things where it's like, oh God, what if they find me out? Well, if I did this good of a job to get in this seat to like convince these people that I can do this thing that I can't do, good for me. Good for me, bully on me that I actually was able to be a whole way crook and just
Mhm.
get into this spot, right? Like, who am I to like take away my own shine when I did all this work to get into this chair? Oh, and if I don't know how to do it, then good for me. So,
Exactly. So do you think, that being said, do you think that a lot of times, minority communities are receiving bad advice or have maybe a lack of understanding of what you need to do to get into these
mhm,
tech roles, to get into the tech world and everything like that? Because you can even be in social media marketing and social media management
yeah,
for a tech company, and that is something that you don't need a degree
yeah,
you really don't need a degree to do social media management, so
yeah.
do you
So I
feel
think
like that?
Well, I think it's twofold, right? I think some
Mhm.
of it is outdated information, which makes it bad,
Okay.
advice. But then also you have like these companies that are still operating on very old systems. So you'll
Mhm.
see where they'll require everything, and instead of questioning it and taking your shot with it, you just see that as like the end all be all. Let me not apply. Let me not, even embarrass myself by going out for a role that I know that I don't necessarily qualify for, So I think what happens right now, is that
Mhm.
you have a lot of people that are operating on these old tenets of what it takes to get a job, right?
Yeah.
And when you have people that are operating on that, whether it's the company that's hiring or it's the people that are relaying the information because they work for the companies, you create just this kind of mystique around technology and the industry in and of itself. So yeah, I definitely think that there's some bad advice being given because I see it on the internet all the time. But then there's
Mhm.
also like these little beacons of hope because you see these pathways being created by some of these companies where they are teaching their employees how to be more technical. So you
Mhm.
could be in a non-tech job and they're like starting initiatives so that you can get the skill set to be more technical, right?
Yeah.
That's where the good advice comes in that says, listen, if you're not in tech right now and you have that opportunity at an institution, take it. That way you can start building up a portfolio or adding it to your resume so you can pivot, right? But not a lot of people are having those conversations about like what it takes to pivot or, just kind of meeting people where they're at. I think that's like the biggest thing. It's like if somebody's working in like the food industry and they want to pivot into technology, how does one do that?
Mhm.
There has to be a strategy in place, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like this grandiose thing, but the advice given to that person might be like, oh, you can't. They're just too they're just too different of industries,
Uh,
like you
I've had
can't
it.
make the jump.
I've had no, and for me, I've had because from like I have a communications degree, so I've worked in a couple of like I've done sales, I've done recruiting, things along that nature, and you will have people saying that hey, like you can't get into tech, you if you wanted to be a programmer or something like that, because it was something that crossed my mind. I'm not gonna lie,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially when you see the economical climate right now,
Yeah.
it's something that crosses your mind like hey, maybe should I pivot into another career path, should I look for something different, should I do some of
Mhm.
those things, um and I think is again because it's like a limiting belief system.
Mhm.
When we talked about imposter syndrome, I think something that comes and that's a piece to imposter syndrome is limiting beliefs,
Mhm.
where we limit what we believe we can do.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think all of us, and myself included, I even had some stuff that happened this weekend that kind of cleared my mind on the things that I'm doing. Um, limiting beliefs in what we're capable of. And a lot of that can come and rooted from childhood, from interacting with other people, things along that nature. So do you feel like you've dealt with in your personal life or for yourself or where you are in your career, have you dealt with limiting beliefs of
Still
what
dealing.
you're capable of? Still dealing with, yeah.
Still dealing. It's one of those things and it's It's annoying. Let's call a spade a spade. It's
Mhm.
annoying
It
to
is.
always have to go back to the drawing board on what you believe your worth is, right? And I think it's really deeply embedded in our society that our worth has to be what we can do. Like that's
Mhm.
it. What you can provide, what your actionable things are, that's what dictates your worth, right? So, and I think for people of color, it's even 100 times worse because it, I mean, just societally speaking, it's
Mhm.
always been this rat race
Yeah.
where it's like you have to prove that you're 1,000 times better than the next person to even be looked at for the same opportunities. So
Mhm.
then when you have that already embedded in a culture, on top of whatever your parents raised you to believe, on top of whatever your environment was, like
Whatever
I
you
grew
see in the
up,
media as well.
yeah, I grew
Mhm.
up in the 90s. So I'm an 80s baby, grew up in the 90s. My mom was a single parent. mother from a third world country. Everything that came out of her mouth was almost hateful. There was no love in my household. There was very much so these pointed conversations about worth, and they
Mhm.
weren't in a positive disposition. So
Right.
imagine having to like hear that all the time on top of being a Black woman in society in
Mhm.
a city where Black folks aren't really that prevalent. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. We don't have very many Black folks in comparison to like the bigger cities, the inner city, so on and so forth. So you're constantly navigating your identity and your worth. And then, not for nothing, I don't look like any of my peers at all. So I got
Right.
teased and picked on because I wasn't Black enough to be Black. I wasn't white enough to be white. It's just this weird dynamic that happened. So
Mhm.
now add on top of that, you have real life responsibilities, right? As you become an adult, as you're walking into the next stage of your life, now you have these corporations and these schools and these institutions telling you that the only way that you can prove that you're worthy is by getting A's in all these classes, by
Mhm.
getting the degree, by getting the paying job that actually allows you to buy land, to get a car, to do these things. So you have like all these different factors that keep just boggling down on you. So it's always a question of like, what is my worth, right? But I will say the beauty in recognizing that as a woman of color in America is that I can navigate it so much better because I can choose to not participate in some of these conversations.
Yeah.
Like the idea that I don't have a degree. At this
Mhm.
point, I'm going to get one just because I don't know. I feel like I want the discipline part of it of like, hey, I actually focused on something long enough to see it through to completion. But imagine being 35 years old and without a degree and being able to really live in one of the biggest cities in the world. I live in Los Angeles where it's like the most expensive place to live. I'm doing okay, I'm not
Yeah.
starving. I'm
Yeah.
not, on my last leg. But it's so interesting because once you are able to identify all these different aspects that, really hone in on that limiting belief system that is being built and its system because it's all these different powers that play. Once you're able to identify that, you empower yourself to be able to step back and look at some of the rhetoric around your life, and you get to pick and choose what you want to be true in your life. And
Mhm.
I feel like it's made a world of difference. Most of my anxiety and stress now doesn't come from all these external factors. Now they come from me, which is way better than the 100 different places. Now it's just
Mhm.
1v1 as opposed to 1v100.
Exactly. And the funny part about what you were saying too is that, so many people feel that, oh, if you're not successful in your 20s and then you get into your 30s and stuff like that, that your life is ruined. Or
Right.
that you get people like Gary Vee, for instance, who say like, he'll tell you you're 35, girl, you're young. Like you're like even my parents are in their 60s, and
Mhm.
even seeing like hell, like let's say they screwed everything up until they was 35, right?
Mhm.
And now they're 67 and something like that. You literally lived another whole life in those 30 years. You see what I mean? So
Mhm.
like I just feel like we're so much in going back to that rat race that you were talking about, especially in the Black community, because in the Black community there's a lot of intersectionality with what you're talking about when you're saying I'm Black, but I'm also a Black woman. I'm also a Black woman living here. I'm also, this. I'm also that. There's so much that is on top of that, and you bring in your daughter, your mother, or any of those things that might be coming up. It can really warp your mind on
Mhm.
what you're able to do and what you're capable of doing. And then your self-worth is so tied up in what your career is and what you do and how much money you make and all the things that you have, that you forget the most fundamental thing that everyone wants in life, which is happiness. And when you were telling me all that, I was saying to myself, okay, so when does happiness come into play here? When does happiness come into play? Like,
Right. No, seriously. And that's a really good question because I think the hardest part of happiness is the definition of it for each individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can read all the self-help books, you can go to therapy, you can listen to all the podcasts centering around this idea of happiness and peace, but you have to have your own definition for it. It's very like a, choose your own adventure situation. Um, but
Like a
you
video game.
know, like the video games, yeah, exactly. But it's like I think happiness has to be in all of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't really put the emphasis on happiness only because it can take you a lifetime to find happiness if that's what you're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my focus has always been peace, right? Like with all the chaos that has happened in my life and living in a chaotic place, the word that I choose to lean on and really hold on to is peace. Happiness to me comes and goes because there's some things that make you happy, there are other things that really knock you off your square. But like peace is a state of being for real for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to figure out what happiness looks like in my life, like true, like bliss, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever like got that in its
Yeah.
true form. I've gotten little, spouts of it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I really just choose peace because it's the one that makes the most sense for me.
No, and I understand. And like honestly, I like just based upon what you said, that should be your one word why. Like if you go into something Evan Carmichael says with his book, One Word Why. He's a great friend of the podcast, guys. Like definitely check out his book, One Word Why, and Built to Serve. And I believe he just came out with another book. But in there he really talks about like where your pain comes from and what you truly want. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are afraid to look at. Where
Hmm.
does your pain comes from? Like where does that stuff come from that make you feel like unworthy or
Hmm.
make you feel the most, I guess, uncomfortable? And
Hmm.
normally that's going to be what your one word why is. That's going to be the thing that fuels you when things get hard, because when you're an entrepreneur, which to me, I think, especially with the economic climate that we have now, everyone should have some sort of a side hustle, something that they're building off on the side that's not dependent upon the current job market or the current job that they have. And being an entrepreneur and, really honing in and digging into that point, you have to have a good mindset and you have to have your way of thinking correct and understanding what that one word why is going to fuel you when things get hard. Because things do get hard.
Oh yeah.
They do. Things that you don't know, things that you were surprised about, it's just gonna happen. That's just life.
Hmm.
You have to be able to roll with the punches and keep moving forward. I'm not saying don't think about it. You should think about it, but just keep moving forward and going from there.
Yeah.
Um,
I have
but
a
that.
good analogy for that too. It's like one of my one of my very, very, very close friends, dare I say my best friend, she
Mhm,
told me many years ago that your emotions are all valid and
mhm,
they're all basically these great actors, right? And just like any great actor, they want their time on stage.
mhm,
So if you have any emotion that you're feeling, allow it its time on stage. That way it can get out those lines that it needs to get out and then allow it to exit stage left so that the next emotion can come in.
mhm,
And the more I thought about that analogy, the more it made sense because like you said, it's going to get hard. It's going to feel like there is too much to carry and it's going to be some really dark moments, right? But if you
yeah.
allow yourself to feel what you're feeling in those moments and allow it to pass so that you can make room for happiness or make
Mhm,
room for optimism or make room for whatever your positive upswing of emotion is, then you'll notice that there's no lingering baggage because now this actor doesn't have to fight for stage time. The actor
mhm.
has exit stage left and went in the back and got refreshments, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really my analogy now until forever about how emotion and yeah, just like you said, in those moments of like hardship, what what we can do to really make sure that we are checking in with ourselves and taking care of ourselves when we hit a wall or when we're at our lowest, whether it's because of lack of finance or lack of opportunity, or sometimes you just feel down. Hell, it
Mhm.
happens, but allowing yourself the space to actually feel the emotion and allow that emotion that stage for their monologue, because that's really what it is. Sadness has its monologue. It's trying to get it out. And if you keep trying to get that actor off the stage, he's going to keep fighting other actors to get on that stage so
Yeah.
that he can do his monologue. So,
Yes. So
but
you
yeah,
need to learn how to exercise him so you
yeah,
don't have that built up. Because trust me, when the pressure comes, all of that emotion is going to spill out, and something that you didn't want to happen
exactly. That's
will happen.
That's
So,
literally the actor fighting other actors. That's what that looks like when people have rage and have like all these ailments and diseases and all this stuff happening that are directly impacted by stress, sadness, depression, et cetera, et cetera.
mhm,
It's mostly that the actor didn't get his time on stage.
mhm.
That's it.
That's
Because
it.
now he's fighting. He literally out here with a bat swinging on happiness and joy. Like, hey,
Mhm.
get off the stage.
Like I believe it's the dude from Walking Dead with the little bat that had the thing.
Oh yeah,
I forgot his name. I
absolutely.
think it's like Deacon or something like that. Guys, tell me in the comments section.
Neeson,
I know. At least Neeson.
something
Or
like that.
yeah, something along those lines. um, but yeah, I have actually I'm gonna say three more questions for you, and then we're gonna get into our 2-minute pitch segment, which is my favorite part of these interviews. We'll talk about that later. But to kind of like, I guess, round out our conversation about being in the tech field, I think one of the big questions that they always have, because we've talked about it a little bit, is how do I get into the tech field? How do I pivot from
Mhm.
one career path to another?
Absolutely. So I think the easiest way to pivot is, or the simplest way, I'll say, because I won't make it seem like it's easy. Nothing is really easy when it's starting over, essentially, right?
Mhm,
But I will say, sitting down and figuring out what you actually want to do. Because if you figure out the problems that you want to solve or what you want to do, then it doesn't matter what industry it is. You'll be able to pivot because you know what problems you want to solve, right? The way that I was able to pivot from marketing, like literally online marketing, into finance is because the problems that I wanted to solve. Um, it was a matter of sitting down and really realizing, like, okay, well, at the end of it all, let's say, like, Lord forbid something happens to me. What was my impact on the world? I want to be able to help people. Okay, well, how can I help people in finance? And figured it out, right? And I was like, "Oh, through the lens of technology. Wow, okay, that makes sense." So then I went and worked for a finance company, um, that their whole thing is technology, right? Like, how do we create better technologies for our clients so that they can understand, um, financial decisions better and have better financial literacy and all that stuff like that. So I would say step number one would be to figure out what problem you want to solve, or what legacy you want to leave, that type of stuff. And I know that gets really deep, so it may take a little bit for somebody to figure that out. If you don't have the time for that because you're like, I'm trying to get to this paper, whatever, I would say to actually participate in some type of local meetup that have people in technology already, right? And what you'll find is, like, if it's not coding or if it's like people in HR and tech or something, there's all these like meetups of people in technology. They've popped up a lot over the years, but you can go and network and talk to people and pick their brains on, like, well, what do you do in technology? And
mhm.
get some ideas that way. That way, you can kind of have that assist in figuring out what the next step would be in your career. And then apply for the job. That's it. The worst thing that could happen is, and
They say no.
somebody says, like, hey, you don't have all the qualifications. We're looking for somebody who has
Mhm,
XYZ background. Okay, that's fine. If you keep getting that though, then you might have to think about like educating yourself in that field if that's something that you're really set on doing, right? Like it's just a matter of like what your commitments are and how bad you really want this thing. But if
Mm.
it's, like you heard it once or twice, and then other people were, interviewing you and getting you through the process, and you're not getting through the interview,
Mhm.
then at that point you have to like start reaching out to maybe people who actually do interview practice for a living
Yeah,
and
like
see like,
recruiters and stuff like that.
yeah, like
Mhm.
recruiters and things of that sort
Career
to see
coaches.
all of that. And you can do all that on LinkedIn. There's all these people that are like constantly giving their services away for free, or they
Mhm.
have like different programs you can buy into. But if you're really serious about making a pivot, I would say really exhaust your options when it comes to like making sure that your resume is airtight, making sure that you know what problems you want to solve, and then getting the practice so that you can actually perform well in front of these recruiters and also the people, the hiring managers, because not only are they looking for people that are qualified, they're looking for people that will fit their team dynamic. So, maybe there's something in your personality that didn't quite fit their team dynamic, and that's
Mhm.
things to take into consideration as well.
Of course, of course. And guys, honestly, like pivoting and getting into a new career path is never easy. And, I think on like a lot of the tips that you just gave is what we need to consider, especially, and I know I keep saying it, but especially nowadays, it's something that we need to consider
Mhm.
moving forward with all the layoffs and everything like that. But to pivot in this conversation,
No pun intended.
no pun intended. There's two questions that I have for you about content creation. I would say the first one is about being a thought leader, because I think a lot of times with what your experience level is, what you know how to do, everything like that, you have a certain level of knowledge that you want to give out to the world, and you can use it through making YouTube videos, blogs, things like that. It really doesn't matter. It's more about what you're comfortable with medium wise. So what do you think about the individual that say, hey, I want to be a content creator, I want to really get started, I have this level of knowledge but don't know where to start? What would your advice be for them?
It goes back to the idea of like, what problems do you want to solve, right? Um, because the one thing that I had to really like buckle down on when it came to my content creation is I was being too broad, right? And that doesn't look like a thought leader at all. That just looks like somebody who kind of reposts cool things, It doesn't really
Like my
give off.
Facebook feed.
It's like that doesn't really give off a masterful person, I have a mentor who told me a long time ago, like, if you're a master of one, you can really speak to that. And then, if that one only lasts for a year and you move on to something else, at least you are able to like pinpoint your mastery. So I would say, like, figure out what questions or problems you want to solve and write it out in the form of a question, answer the question on your content. That's like the easiest way to make content is answering questions. And you don't even have to say that it's a question when you're creating content. You could just create the content. I have a whole series on how to hack Instagram for, the Instagram algorithm. It comes to me more times than not. People ask me, how do you hack, Instagram's algorithm? How do you keep up with the ever changing algorithm? And then I had a ton of people that didn't even know what an algorithm was. So these are all questions that I was able to answer on my page because I'm like, listen, if you don't even know what an algorithm is, first of all, everybody was kind of using it wrong for many, many years. And even now, I still see people using algorithm wrong, which cracks me up. For the sake of my sanity, I'll tell y'all that algorithm really is just priority, right? Like you can literally take out the word algorithm and put in the word priority. They're interchangeable, they are synonymous. But when people say algorithm, it's almost like they're saying the powers that be won't let me. They won't let me be great. They're not, giving the views to my
The
thing.
secret
No,
society in the social media sphere is stopping my post from getting all these likes.
yeah. And I mean, if you're on TikTok, it kind of feels like that. But
Yeah.
on Instagram, the beauty about Meta is that since they've gotten in so much trouble over the years for not being transparent, now they're like too transparent to the point where they're
Mhm.
teaching classes on how to best use their platforms for
Mhm.
free. For free. You can go learn on Meta's website
And get a
what
certification.
and get a certification on
Mhm.
what their actual like requirements are and community guidelines are to use their platform. But people are still kind of like mystifying algorithm. So I
Mhm.
use it as an opportunity as a thought leader and somebody who's been in social media for as long as I have, and somebody who actually broke the the mother company's website and said, you know what, let me just go on here and talk my talk. And I think that's really what it is finding out what questions you want to answer, what problems you want to serve, and then just talking your talk. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if we can cuss on here, otherwise I'll say the other thing, but talk your trash, say it in a way that is authentic to your voice and the way that you actually feel about it. And if it's nothing
Mhm.
that really moves you, you probably shouldn't be making content on it. That's just, you know, that's gonna really read when people look at your content.
And that's true. Like even for us here at Creator Source Studios and Mad Talk, something that I'm gonna be doing starting in January, February is making content about like building a YouTube channel, how to find YouTube ideas, things like that. And for me, even talking about imposter syndrome, I felt like that a little bit because I was like, well, I don't have the biggest following on YouTube. I don't have all these things, but I do know the mistakes I've made and how I improved upon them and how it helped with some of the other videos that I've done and some of the content that I personally produced. So, I think that that's the thing too, is that being a thought leader does not mean you need 20 years in the whatever game you're doing. Like it just mean you're talking about the mistakes that you've made and
Hmm.
telling people, "Hey, I wouldn't do this if I was you." Like
Right.
how they say in the black community, when I'm like, "I wouldn't do that if I was you." Like that. That's what we're talking about here. That's like all the stuff you wouldn't do. That's what you're trying to tell others, and you can always help someone else, regardless of your, I guess, expert level. And I think that goes into going back to the conversation we had about pivoting and everything like that into a new career path, is that
Hmm.
we feel like we don't have 5, 7 years of successful experience and rewards and all this other stuff. How am I qualified to do this? It's just more
Hmm.
about like, hey, you've done the work, you know how to do this, just go do it. Even if you
Yeah,
fail, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong
absolutely.
with failing.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so that goes into the next question I have for you. And after this question, we're going to get into the 2 minute pitch segment. You own or have owned a creative agency. The big thing here is like, how do you even start something along those lines? Because you can get these people who are like, hey, I want to start a social media management agency. How is that different from a creative agency? Like, so and you hear these words, or a digital agency, and you hear these words all online, all
Yeah.
over the place. And I think let's provide some clarity. Let's provide some clarity here. So, how would
Yeah.
you suggest someone getting started with a creative agency?
Well, let's define a creative agency, right? I think
Exactly.
that's probably like the most important part of this whole thing. I called my firm a creative agency because I was able to do like multiple creative aspects of uh online marketing, from
Mhm.
like graphic design, web design, like there was design elements in it, right?
Yeah.
And then there were also technical aspects in it. So I figured the best way to articulate that duality was to say that it's a creative agency. And I worked with a lot of creatives. So it was just like it kind of, felt natural. And I
Mhm.
was more inclined to use creative agency when describing my firm. So there's that. I mean, you can call anything. Like, you can call an apple an orange, whatever. That that's your priorities are prerogative. But the way that I
Apple,
got
orange.
it's like I knew some that was in your house. That's so funny.
How'd you- I got an avocado too, if we want to talk about that as well.
Yes, that's a fruit as well.
Yes.
But I'll say like the way that I actually got started, um, way long time ago. This is how you know I'm aging myself. So back when the biggest thing to advertise or promote was flyers.
Yeah.
You got flyers for events, you put them on the cars, you hand them out to people at places, whatever, right? So I thought, okay, well, we're coming of age where social media is a great platform to, promote. Why not have an agency that has flyer groups go out, but
Mm-hmm.
then also have the digital marketing aspect where you advertise on Facebook before they had Facebook advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the idea got started. And all I did was keep refining it as time changed and as the needs changed of the people that I was serving. So I started noticing flyers, like physical flyers, weren't as important. So now do a digital flyer. So what does that include? Graphic design or whatever, right? So now, all right, we'll have a graphic designer on the team. Now we have like a web developer on the team. Now we have somebody that does SEO on the team because you might need an article written out for that. And I did PR for years. So I was like, oh, yeah. And then we can do press on it. So now we have like a whole working system of different people that can actually get your event put out there. And I focused only on events for a long time. I think it was like maybe 3 years of just focusing on events. Like if you had an event coming up, I was the event lady. Then it shifted because I was exhausted. Events are tiring. The people
They
that
are.
run events, bless them, but they are pretty much the most tiresome group of clients I had. So then that's when the shift came in, and it was like, okay, not so much about events, but more about the brand itself. How do we communicate to the world how great your brand is and what your brand offers? And that's when we had to start getting more people on the team, because now you have all these moving components when it comes to a brand. We had to start creating what's called a brand Bible for our clients, which would break down like all the elements of the brand and how it should show up online and how it would show up on print. Then you have the PR aspect still. So you have like a PR agency now, because now I was able to like pivot and like get work with agencies. So
Mhm.
I feel like the first step in creating something this massive is the first step. And the first step is figure out somewhere where you can really focus in on, and then you can scale it to be larger. You don't
Mhm.
have to start large, because starting large normally means that you'd have to go back in
Mhm.
to go back out. And that's a lot of energy, a lot of resource, a lot of time. So instead, start small and then gradually get bigger. That way you can build something that's more sustainable. And then also so that you can really harp in on what it is that you like doing about the agency model.
Mhm.
Like you may not like social media after doing it for a year when you're just a manager, right? So then you start figuring out like, well, what do I actually like to do? Maybe I do want to get into PR. Then I can create a PR agency. Or
Mhm.
maybe I like the graphics aspect of it, and I can create some type of um, graphic design company where, we do production and all that stuff. So I
Mhm.
say start with the first step, really hone in on it. And if it's a social media agency that you want to build out, I say to become a manager first. Like get those accounts underneath your belt so that you can see what issues are happening and like what tools are good to use, and then you can scale it up.
And also learning about ad work. Like if you're talking about strictly social media management, that's different than a creative agency. And then also you have like a video production company, which
Hmm.
does more of like the video graphics, editing, things along that nature, which we do here at Creative Source Studios, and we're actually going to be launching that in next year. Um, like learning things like Facebook ads, learning things like Instagram ads, learning things like even Hulu ads, which is becoming something big, and learning like TikTok ads as well. Like if you learn those four aspects and just offer
Hmm.
that, you already have an agency like there
Yeah.
that you can make profitable money with. Don't try to offer way too many things, because I've made that mistake myself, is
Mm.
that I try to basically please too many masters. Oh, well, we want to do more social media management too. We want to do brand development. We want to do web design. And I'm like, wait, get your money in first. The easiest way to get your money in as a video production company is doing editing, because everyone hates video editing. Everyone that they hate video editing with a passion. With a passion. The hell, if you just say, hey, I'm offering bundles, if you need 4 videos done in a month or something like that, let's discuss a price and I can edit those 4 videos for you and distribute it to you at the beginning of the month. And we can always be a month in ahead and we can get you there. Understanding that aspect and doing that, then you can get into things like, okay, now I want to offer full video production services where I
Exactly.
want to like film things for you and things like that. And honestly, I'm gonna be real, like being an editor is a lot easier than going out and filming sometimes, in my own personal opinion, because when you film, you also need to make sure you're being cinematic with what you're doing, lighting, camera, like the lenses needs to be right, the settings need to be right, everything along that nature.
Yeah.
So if you want to get started, just to start making money, start putting stuff in your pocket, video editing. I'm telling you, just get in the video editing side.
Right. The
So
moral of the story is no matter what you're doing, even if it's social media, get into video editing. You know what
yes.
I'm saying? No, but you're absolutely right though, because it, like you said, when you split a hair too many times, it's too much. But if you keep it kind of like honed in on this one idea, even from editing, you can scale.
Mhm.
Like you said, you could start off as an editor, but if they're starting to ask you for all these different things, you can scale upwards and start to outsource some of the work so that you can get other agencies involved. And I
Mhm.
found that that was a very substantial way to like make sure that I had clients all the time, was that I partnered with these agencies who also were on their grind. So we used each other for all these different clients. And then
Mhm.
we all benefited from it at the end because, not only did we all get paid, but now we're starting to get high end clients that can afford to hire us as an umbrella. And,
Mhm.
it really does start with that one thing though. Like, and I can't stress it enough because I know everybody's like, well, I want to have a team and I want to like, basically be the head honcho in charge. And I get that. But if you can step back and look at it and really focus in on the one can lead to plenty,
Multiple.
tenfold.
Yes. And I think a lot of times with us as creatives, we don't want to do that because we want to, oh, I want to be as cinematic as possible. Like that's a lot of times with filmmakers, with social media people, they like, hey, I want to be, a social media manager, and then I want to get like all these different things. And you don't necessarily need a massive team to offer
Right.
some stuff, because what you were saying, that's basically a form of white labeling. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically a form of white labeling where you go and you find freelancers who can do what you need to do, and you white label and you outsource it out. Every marketing or ad agency does this. This is not
Mm-hmm.
a bad thing.
For years, for
For
years, I
years.
did PR as a freelancer, and I was able to work with Prince before he passed away, and I worked with like all these amazing individuals and artists and stuff like that. But my name doesn't show up on anything because it's white label, and I got paid for it, and that was it. But I was also able to put it on my portfolio that I did the work, and I
Mhm.
still have a lot of those relationships to this day. So it's like it's the white label aspect of it is fantastic, but the relationships you make is like far more,
Far
far
more
more
lucrative.
worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because if you can find people that you can work with at all times, that you get along with, and y'all can do this, that's better
you
than
won.
anything else you want. Yeah,
You
that's
won.
better. That's even better than having a bunch of employees that you have, because there it's more of, okay, we have a common understanding. You know your role, I know mine. Let's do this and let's just
Hmm.
create something. Um,
Absolutely.
yes. So that being said, I'm actually going to pivot us into our 2 minute pitch segments. Give me one second. I'm actually
Yay.
pulling up my timer. We're gonna bring you back because I think that we need to have a discussion about white labeling on this channel. I'm bringing you back. Like
Yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely, because I
we're gonna
think
have another conversation about that.
it's
Um,
definitely a scary thing for people. So yeah, I think that'd be fantastic.
yes. So I have 2 minutes on the clock. In those 2 minutes, you can pitch whatever you need to do, and then once you hear the timer, that's when you're done. Let's see how good. Like I love doing this because
My
I
elevator pitch.
yes, I want to see if people have the elevator pitch down. In school, I was in a entrepreneurial program, and they was like, "Yeah, you always need to have the elevator pitch." And I've interviewed so many entrepreneurs that don't know how to do this correctly, who
Oh
have
yeah.
successful businesses. So that woman was wrong. I was right. I'm gonna send this video to her. But anyway, I'm put 2 minutes on the clock, starting now.
I am the Dannielle J. I am the life hacker slash social media hacker slash productivity hacker that you didn't know you needed in your life. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms at the Dannielle J. YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok are the main three, but I'm also on Patreon, and we're also going to have a web series that drops in the summer of 2023. So make sure that you are following so that you can get updates for all these things and more. I am looking forward to helping you make sense of the internet and really get down to the nitty gritty so you can stay popping online.
Damn, you actually are the quick guy. You're the quickest that we had on here so far.
I don't come to play. I come to slay.
You did 1 minute and 25 seconds still on the clock. I think you the fastest. I think you're the fastest. That's crazy.
My elevator moves fast, man. I don't
Yes.
that 2 minutes. I'm like, yo, that's too long.
Sometimes elevators don't go to the top floor neither. So I mean, like, hey, anyway.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway, so that being said, Dannielle, again, I would like to thank you for coming in. It means so much to me, and I truly do appreciate it. Guys, definitely follow Dannielle on all of her social medias in the description box. We're gonna have links to everything, and definitely check out her web series that are coming out December 2023. Hell, we might even drop another interview for you guys
Let's
like in
do it.
November to prepare for it. But yeah, that being said, what we like to do at this point of the interview, Dannielle, is offer up our question of the day to our guests. You have a question of the day that you can give our audience.
Absolutely. So the question of the day is, what is your word for today?
What is it?
What is your word? Mine is going to be perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay.
Yeah.
Mine, honestly, after you said it, peace.
Yes.
Peace. Mine is going to be peace now because I started thinking about it while you said it. I was like, yeah. So, guys, I want to hear what your word is in the comment section. But other than that, I would like to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share on all your social medias, especially if you found value from this interview. Again, I'm Antoine. Have a great one, and I will catch you in the next Mad Talk interview.